tonight two amazing photographers who work quite differently. So that's going to be really great to talk to you both about how you work and what really inspires you. And Rick Stevens, who is an amazing painter of landscape and actually, I think, paints poetry. Paints haikus and just gorgeous work. So I am so excited to get this started. And so I think we're just going to dive right in. Michael Smith. Hi, Michael. Rose, I feel very guilty when I miss one of these. Wrote then missing class when I was in college, but sometimes work interferes with art. I'm so glad that I can see them on the website later. Yeah, actually, these are all being recorded. So if you miss one, go back and watch it. And I hope you won't be disappointed. These artists have so many great things to say, and an hour just really is not enough. You know what? Let's dive right in with Andrew Beckham. Hi, Andrew Beckham. How are you?
I'm doing great, Rose. Thanks for the invitation. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. So I saw your work when Tina Goodwin still had her gallery right around the corner from the Denver Art Museum. I really miss that gallery. Yeah, and then our mutual friend, Eric Paddock, who is the curator of photography at the Denver Art Museum, when he did that incredible show of different ways to think about landscape in photography. It was amazing. And he pulled me over and said, have you seen this guy, Andrew Beckham? He lives in Denver. I'm like, I don't know him. So immediately had to get in contact with you. So would you talk about, first of all, would you just give us a quick, like, what cameras do you use? How do you do this work?
Sure, absolutely. Well, my career started the better part of 30 years ago. And so for the first chunk of that time, I was working with medium and large format film cameras, like most fine art photographers at that time. But starting at right around 2000, 2001, I started to scan negatives for digital output. And then as the digital landscape got more and more sophisticated in terms of the capture capabilities, I did eventually sort of move over to digital capture as well as digital output. But it was a process, because what I was waiting for was for the sort of digital imaging technology to catch up to the quality of film. And eventually it did.
Yeah.
So what I use now is a couple of different cameras. I use a Sony that's a full frame, 45 megapixel camera, as well as a really beautiful and elegant Fuji, which is a little bit lower in resolution and overall size, but is a great little backup camera. So those are my two primary imaging tools.
So are you doing any film anymore?
I'm really not, although interestingly enough, I still teach it. So I'm in the darkroom regularly, which is great. It's great to sort of have a foot in that world and still have that be a part of my professional life as an educator. But as an artist, I really have moved completely into digital imaging and output. And I should say too that all of the printing that I do is in-house. So I was a very serious printer, in the darkroom for many years, and I took that same level of care and craft into the digital world. So everything I make, start to finish, happens in studio.
Do you miss it? Do you miss the darkroom? And Barbara, I'm going to ask you the same thing. Do you miss it?
Well, I mean, to be very honest with you, towards the end of my time working in the darkroom, as a working artist, I was starting to have some issues in terms of sensitivity, not so much to the chemistry. Black and white chemistry is fairly benign, but some of the other chemicals that were used for things like toning prints, selenium being an example, potassium ferrocyanide for bleaching, for making highlights really pop. Those chemicals are they're toxic, and I was starting to feel that a little bit, even with wearing the respirator and all of the best practices. So in that sense, I do not miss it. I'm happy to be working in a healthier ecosystem.
There's a photographer, he's passed away, James Fee. I don't know if you were familiar with him. He was out of Long Beach and taught there. But I ran into one of his students years and years later, and he said, he just couldn't keep his hands out of the chemicals, just making these prints. And he did die of cancer from it. So, that I think that's an issue with a lot of mediums. I know artists who have quit pastels. Certainly sculpting is very toxic, sculpting in stone and things. So good. So the digital works. So you also have some really interesting processes, and I'm not sure with the work we have that we've got any of these, the compositions that you do that we've had in the past. But I'm wondering if you would kind of talk about composition in the way you see it. I think a lot of artists look at composing the design of something, but you're also often composing image over image or image next to image, and really kind of disparate images, but then finding things that speak to each other within a work. And I'm wondering if you would talk about some of that process.
Sure. I mean, I should start by saying that, because it connects, is that I have a really dedicated writing practice too. So I, in addition to keeping sketchbooks and journals, I take kind of a literary approach to image making very seriously. And with that in mind, I'm always interested in the idea of trying to create what I would describe as a kind of visual poetry. And so sometimes that manifests itself by, as you were alluding to, by taking seemingly disparate images, but then juxtaposing them next to one another in a sequence of images to create a kind of a dialogue, a kind of a visual poetry. And so that is something that I've worked with over the years. But even when I'm not working in that particular formal context, I'm always thinking about the metaphor inherent in an image. I'm thinking about the sort of poetic language inherent in an image. And so for me, I suppose I could be described in really generic terms as a landscape photographer or a landscape land-based artist. But for me, really the land itself, it's interesting because there's this relationship and this connection that's very visceral and very boots on the ground real. And at the same time, to me, the land points to something beyond itself and beyond myself. So the landscape becomes a metaphor for questions about not just our place locally in terms of local geography, but really our place in the universe. And how do we really reconcile what it means to be fully present in a place locally as well as cosmologically. And so that really is what my work is about. And so that comes back around to the idea of images as poem.
Nice. You know what? Can we take that thought and then look at the work? And maybe you can go down that path with us a little bit. So the 1,000-year bristlecone pine from the COVID walks. Oh, and COVID is figuring into everything this year. And I'm really enjoying these conversations with artists about it. So let's talk about this one.
Sure. I mean, I would say, just broadly speaking, the reason I titled this entire suite of images that we're exhibiting through the exhibition this year, I called them the COVID walks. And it's because, this is just the new reality that we found ourselves in since early in 2020. And so living in Colorado and living in the high country or near the high country, I live in Denver, but living close to the high country, one of the only ways to, be able to responsibly and safely be out of the house was to be in the backcountry. And so I spent a lot of time walking and hiking. I do every year, but this year was a banner year for me. I logged in about 150 miles on the trail this summer over about 12 weeks. So it really was a time to be out and to be really contemplative about, the sort of challenges that we were all facing, and at the same time trying to find a sense of solace or a sense of connection, right? So the 1,000-year-old Bristlecold Pine is exactly what it sounds like. This is an extraordinary, extraordinary tree that is part of a grove. Grove sounds odd looking at this picture because it looks quite barren, but it actually is a grove of bristlecone pines up high in the Rockies, right at tree line, some of the oldest in the world. And it's extraordinary that this tree is even alive when you look at this picture, but you can see from all of the green in the boughs that it is in fact thriving.
Wow.
It's just such a wonderful metaphor for tenacity and for, making it through, difficult times.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. You know what? Let's kind of go through these others if you don't mind. And then I'll stop screen sharing and then maybe you can show us the size, some of the dimensions of the pieces. That's kind of one of the tough things for us, of course, this year is not being in front of the work, which I am missing terribly this year. But how about Cloud, Boulder, Moon?
Again, the title kind of speaks to it. To me, there was a real alignment here between these three objects. One of them earthbound, another one in the atmosphere, and the third one celestial, and the way that they formed a kind of a conversation, the three between each other. A little hard to see the half moon up in the upper right on the screen here, but it is crystal clear in the original print. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. That's gorgeous. And because you hike so much, you find these outstanding rock formations here's another one.
Yep. So this is a place that is near and dear to my heart. In fact, I often say that this is the most extraordinary place on the planet that I have yet been to. And this is Upper Glacier Gorge in Rocky Mountain National Park. That extraordinary formation, upper right, is called the Spearhead. It's 800 vertical feet of granite. And what I loved about this image was, because I've been photographing this mountain for 30 years, and I never get it quite right because it's impossible to really relay how extraordinary this place is. But what I loved about this particular image that I took this summer is the way that this smaller rock in the left foreground is sort of formally, in terms of composition, formally in conversation with that much, 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 much more monolithic object in the upper right. And I really like the juxtaposition of the scale and the conversation between the two.
Well, and these look like tracks leading up.
They do look like tracks. In fact, those are caused naturally. That would be the exfoliation of the granite caused by frost wedging from ice and snow over the millennia.
Wow. Wow. God, these are just stunning. Okay, and this one, when you capture these, the crowned monolith, and here are these rocks and all these trees, or these boulders, and these trees have grown up around them. I mean, they're just...
This is a much more intimate image in some ways than some of the grand vistas we just looked at, but I'm always trying to be very present in the moment through a hike, even when I'm huffing and puffing and really working to get up a trail, or where there's no trail and it's really just bushwhacking and route finding, which was the case here. And this is one of those places that you could really have just as easily have just blown right past. But the way that there are these collection of small little rocks and objects sitting on top of this larger boulder, and the way that that sort of filtered light was illuminating the top or the crown of the rock. It just was uncanny to me, and the sense of those objects on top of it as though they'd been placed there. And of course they hadn't been placed there intentionally by any person or any critter, but there is a sense of intentionality that you experience sometimes in the wilderness that is that really is uncanny and really is transcendent. And to me, this was one of those examples.
So this is making me wonder, why black and white? Why not color?
So for me, what black and white does as a baseline is it creates a little bit of separation between what I would describe as an image that is more documentary, as opposed to an image that is more metaphorical. And when you work in color, and there are many artists, many photographers who work in color whose work I deeply, deeply admire, right? The language of color photography is really very different. It really is a different way of describing the world. And what I'm interested in, as I said earlier, is a way to use photography to talk about something beyond itself. And so for me, black and white does that more effectively.
That is such a good way to look at it. And it's always a question as a non-photographer that I have is how you make that decision. But that is it's the way you're putting it sounds almost less of a decision and more of a mindset for the way you want to capture your walks.
Yeah, it's both. It's a mindset philosophically, but it's also an aesthetic decision formally in terms of the way that you want the image to read when it's finished.
So a couple more here, and then I'm going to grab Barbra. And I know we've got some comments. I'm going to get to your comments and questions here really quick. But would you just, a galaxy of windfall, would you talk about that?
Just this absolutely crazy, chaotic, unbelievably beautiful cluster of fallen trees that came down from heavy wind and a storm, and that were also the result of beetle kill. Of course, the Rocky Mountains have been devastated by the pine beetle in recent years, and yet there's beauty in that, And for me, when an image like this is what I'm talking about when I say, how does something very local and almost very intimate reflect something larger than ourselves? And for me, this image really is a metaphor about nebula, about galaxies, about the idea of the spiral arm. So this is an image that points beyond itself.
Yeah, wow.
It talks about destruction and beauty sort of all in the frame.
Well, and it's almost that there's destruction, but nature is just going to work its way through it, right. With or without us. Yep. And then this one seems a little different for you, in memoriam.
Yes, it is a little different from me. In some ways, it's a more conventional landscape. This was the reason I included this piece. This was up on a high ridge line at 12,000 feet, looking at Grays and Torreys, two of our really iconic 14ers in Colorado. This image was made with a storm coming in, and you can really see that reflected in the light and the clouds. Mm-hmm. I made this image not knowing, because I was out in the field all day, not knowing that this was the day that Ruth Bader Ginsburg had passed away.
Oh.
And so the title Requiem is really, it's a piece that really, with not only the light from the clouds, but the illumination in the foreground, in an otherwise very dark landscape, was a piece that really seemed uncanny in the sense that I made it and then found out later that was the same day that she had passed. And so that Requiem is for her. That's what this piece is.
Wow. That is stunning. Thank you for that. Thank you so much. Okay. Michael Smith, yes, spectacular. They really are. And Michael comments, I love the faces in this rock. And I'm thinking it's the gosh, which one of it? The conversation, maybe put that in the chat, Michael. And Ginny reminds me of a fairy tale image. You know what? There is that aspect of your work. It has a dreamlike fairy tale aspect to it, especially when you kind of add the images right next to each other, that juxtaposition of images.
Right.
Go nowhere, my friend. I will be back to you. Barbra VanCleve.
Hi.
Hello, Barbra.
So I'm delighted to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. Calling in from Montana. How is it up there? Is it snowing yet?
No, we've had some snow, but it's all melted off. What we've got is wind, and I can do without wind unless I want snow moved.
Oh, right.
Snow to move. We do have it up in the mountains, so.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
Beautiful.
You know, Barbra, you have the most fantastic story of how you became a photographer. Your dad, Spike, handed you your first camera, right?
That's right. Turned out I begged for one because I couldn't draw, couldn't paint, couldn't do any of that. And we didn't have sculpting in the little one-room schoolhouse I went to. But I loved ranching, and I wanted to communicate to people, other people, what a wonderful life it was. And it definitely was then. It's changed a little bit today. And of course, I'm old enough to look back and say, it was a lot better then when I was growing up. You know, it's a bad habit.
No, well, it's lovely that you can do that, because then you share that with us so that we know what we've missed. And before I get to your imagery, because this is your land, these are the people who work with you, your horses, your cattle, and all that you shoot, and you are a rancher. But what generation, Montanite? What is the term? What generation?
Well, I'm a fifth generation Montana.
Okay, wait, just tell the story. How did you guys end up in Montana?
Well, like everybody, we came from back east. That's how it was. When people complain about Easterners moving to Montana, I say, wait a minute. You know how this place got settled? Right. You know how we took it over from the Native Americans? It was people from the East. And my great-great-great-grandfather went to West Point, graduated from there, became a surveyor on the railroad at that time. And he married a girl from down south who was educated in England and France, and she spoke 5 languages. Well, it was quite an ordeal for her when she moved to Montana.
Oh my God.
It was it was just a territory then. And they officially came. We had a relative named Lieutenant Crittenden, who was under Custer's command and of course was killed. And his family asked my great-great-grandfather to come settle his affairs. So he did. And he liked the country, and he decided to move to Montana. And that's how they came. He found an old rancher whose wife had died, children were gone, and the old fellow needed to be close to town or in town. He was getting that old and that in need of help, assistance. So he talked him into selling him that ranch, the brand, the cattle, and the sheep. And people might say, well, why sheep? Well, as my granddad said, best insurance in the world against cattle prices going down, because when cattle prices went down, sheep went up. And wow. Sheep you could shear twice a year too.
Sure, right? Wow. Oh, okay.
So it was economic wisdom. And that's how the family came to Montana and stayed, and were ranching in almost the same place where the original family homestead was.
Really, really. Now, you actually went to college for English, the literature, right?
Yes, but let me tell you, words make pictures.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my master's is in Victorian poetry, which I love. I love poetry.
Wow.
And I just, people say I can't understand the connection between poetry or literature and photography. Well, that is silly. Come on, open your mind a little bit more. They're pictures, but in different ways.
You know what? Let's take that. And this is so much fun because you and Andrew already are sharing this same concept of writing and literature and words with pictures. And I think this is so fascinating. And let's dive into the work, Barbra. The first one is Cowgirl Ready. And oh my gosh, your night scenes. I just love. How did you do this?
Well, this is part of my series of shooting by only the light of the moon. That is what I want. And I'm using cowgirls because they are usually underrepresented, or else they are, it's a different kind of representation. I have trouble with the word cowgirl because it kind of reminds me of buckle bunnies at the rodeos.
Oh, God.
Right in, and they're waving their hands, but they're not what I call real ranch girls. This girl is. She and her husband ranch. She's got 2 boys, and I love, she's cowgirl ready. Look at her little 38 there.
Yeah, right?
The first time I photographed her, she had her husband's 45 strapped around there. And I was hoping she would bring it again for this next shoot, but she wanted her own 38 special there.
Wow.
And of course, we have the stars in the background.
Ah, wow. So my son Frank has gotten into shooting the stars. I cannot get him to study for his math final, but he can spend all night watching YouTube videos on how to shoot the galaxies. So that's what he's been doing. And he's just in awe of these because you've got this ranch woman here, just absolutely gorgeous, and the light of the moon, which is such a different tone, and these stars twinkling behind.
But growing up on a ranch, there's a lot that's done before the heat of the day, before the sun gets up, so that you can get the work done without taxing your cattle too much, especially Angus with those black hides that just absorb the sun. So,
oh, wow.
And I wanted to be able to record some of that and give people a look into that part of ranch life.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
So that was my impulse. And I love black and white. I find color too seductive. And I think it can lead you astray. You can get hooked on color instead of composition and design, which is very subtle.
Oh, that's interesting. So you can lose your place in it almost?
I think you can, but that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm defending my choice of black and white.
Yeah. Well, okay, and this will be a good question for Rick when it's his turn, because boy, does he use color. So, I mean.
I know that blue was just knock your socks off. Oh. It was wonderful.
So we're going to find out how he manages not to get lost in the middle of the color. Okay, tell us about Twilight Dreams. Look at this.
Well, again, it's these two gals, both got children of their own. They wanted to know if they could bring them. And I thought, no, I don't think so. They each had two boys. And I thought, I just need a little more quiet here for this kind of photography. And you can see where the moonlight is coming from. You can see the stars and the beauty of the clouds. And I had a little fun. I have learned now not to get close to the base of mountains when the when the moon is rising on the east side of the mountains, because even though it says the moon's going to be up at 9 o'clock, to get over the ridge of the mountains so I could see it and use it to photograph, I had to wait until midnight or later.
For God's sakes.
So from now on, I'm changing my angle. There's another shot called Full Moon Rising that was definitely, there it is.
Yeah, let me grab this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful.
That's the one. Down below are the two riders.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
And I'm here to tell you, I couldn't see a thing when I was trying to negotiate to get over there on the other side of this little pond so I could photograph them. You could see where the moon is teasing, saying it's going to come up there. In a couple of hours it will. So we just had to use a flood lamp to get the gals into position. And it took a longer exposure, of course, because of not necessarily a longer exposure, a higher ISO.
Okay.
So that I could make the shot.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
This is one of my favorite shots.
Oh, these are just so spectacular. And Cowgirls Night.
Cowgirls Night Out.
Oh my gosh, look at this. So, oh wow. And these are
the stars there.
Yeah.
No concern with I have other shots on the ranch where I have used the Big Dipper, put that, had it, I positioned the camera and the rider and the horse and cattle, everything, so I could make it with the Big Dipper. But here, didn't have that opportunity. I just had a plethora of stars, which I'm happy with.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. Oh, Barbara, these are so lovely. And you just get that taste of ranch life, I think. It's just the quiet moments and the beauty of the land, and communing with, like, your photos always feel like they have so much space in them that you capture this beauty of space and quietude. It's just so lovely to see that. They just bring me peace inside when I see them.
You don't have any feeling of emotion?
Oh yeah. Actually, I kind of have a feeling of longing.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Well, I grew up in riding horses back in these little trails like that. And so just to, not to be able to get on a horse and just go is something I miss, but many years ago. So, okay. Get
back to it, Rose. Get back to it.
I know. I just need to come visit you, Barbara.
That's right. And I'll have a compassionate horse.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah. Or you can have an ornery horse for me too. I don't mind.
All right.
Barbara, go nowhere. Rick Stevens is up, and hi, Rick.
Hi, Rose.
Hey, so just a couple comments here. Michael Smith, I have always loved Barbra's work. Her show poster hangs in my office. Oh, okay. And then I can't believe she said Buckle Bunny. So Barbra, you're cracking people up tonight.
Good. We all need to laugh now.
We do. We all need to laugh. And Maeve Eichelberger, our lovely artist in the show. Hi, Rose. Hi, Barbra.
Hi, Maeve. How are you?
We're in awe, so enthralled, big love. So good. Hi, Rick.
Hello.
Good to see you down in Santa Fe.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty cold here.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, maybe we'll get some snow too.
I think it's going to be sunny all week, but it was in the teens. I think it was like 14 degrees this morning.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, we've had that kind of. It is winter though. And it's about to be the shortest day of the year. And you know what happens the next day? It's just up there.
The dawning of Aquarius.
Yeah, that's right. There we go. Okay, so I was telling you this story, Rick. I had seen your work in a magazine article somewhere, and this was years ago. You were still living in Michigan, I think. And I tried to track you down. I tried everything, and I'm a really good sleuth. And I could not find you. And a few years ago, let me see. Oh no, it must have been a year and a half ago. My sons, when they turned 15, I said, who wants to drive me down to Santa Fe and knock off some hours behind the wheel? And my son Kyle came and he drove and we had a great time. But he got kind of tired of me going into all these galleries. So I said, wait in the car. So I literally was running from gallery to gallery on Canyon Road. And I was running back to where we parked the car at Gerald Peters. And out of the corner of my eye, I see this color. And but I kept running and my head just said, you need to go back. You're going to be sorry if you don't go back. And I went into that little gallery between Peters and the bottom of Canyon Road. And I walked in and here is this one-man show of your work. And I was like, it's the guy. It's the guy. And your dealer was so kind. She gave me all your contact information and she called and said, hey, talk to her about this show. And I got you in the Coors show. I'm just so ecstatic about it.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. You had been for 10 years.
Yeah.
I had never heard of the Coors show, but of course I was in Michigan, so it just wasn't on my radar. And right. I haven't been a Western landscape painter. I started showing in Santa Fe, but most of the work was abstract. And eventually I started to get back to landscape. I've always kind of gone back and forth and in between, everything in between more of an abstract kind of expression to something more traditional.
Yeah.
And now the Southwest is my home for about 12 or 13 years. And the landscapes have been places that I keep going back to, and I tend to like to get an intimacy with a place and really keep going back and just, really basking in the effects, the different times of year. And I love to discover new places all the time, but I do have my favorite spots.
So when I walked in and saw the show, your one-man show in Santa Fe, and I remember walking around and I had this sense that I've only ever had when I was standing in the middle of Monet's Water Lilies in Paris. And I don't mean to overdo it, but it was just this lovely sense of calm. And I just felt like I was standing amid. I said it before, haikus. These just feel like these tone poems, and it was just this wonderful calm. It just stand in these colors, and so I'm wondering, we've talked to two black and white photographers, and I love hearing them talk about why black and white, and how powerful black and white photography is. And there is that idea of getting lost in the color. And a lot of artists can't handle this much color. I will tell you that. And I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah, well, for any painter, they have to really get the discipline of seeing the values as if it was a black and white photograph. And now with an iPhone, you can easily just take a quick snapshot, turn it and desaturate it, and you've got black and white. But you need to just learn how to do that. And once you master that, you can kind of play with the values. Like a Bonnard, who's one of my more artists that's really influenced me. He would not only do arbitrary color, not arbitrary in the sense that it was haphazard, it was very carefully arrived at, but also arbitrary values. He would condense certain patterns, and like a figure would disappear into a place setting at the table, and all of a sudden you say, oh, there's a person there. That kind of value manipulation.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the work, and I'm going to go ahead and screen share again, and pull up this painting that is so, well, all your work, just so vivid. Road to Camp.
Yeah, that's a small plein air, although my plein airs are usually way more in the studio. I get information down quickly, and then I like to, I love, a successful landscape, but I like to push it in some way. That was just, I was with a friend and we were camping, and we just looking for any place. And I was just attracted to how that road just kind of took a subtle turn. And backlighting always attracts me. That sort of light that where the forms dissolve into the light.
Well, and how that blue, like that purpley blue, is just so electric, and it jumps even more with that just lovely green, warm green tones around it. It's just exquisite.
A lot of that blue in the shadows is an oil stick, just directly without mixing, just ultramarine blue scumbles right on there at the kind of on the top.
So is this one, so this is an oil painting with oil stick on top, or is it all oil stick?
No, it's both. On the larger work, I add more. On the small work, I keep away from my cold wax medium, which, I varnish my small studies. But with the larger works, I'm adding a lot more body with texture and the cold wax. But I will grab an oil stick, which has some wax in it, but not a lot. And it's a mixture of the oil and some of the oil bars.
So let's pull up, I'm pulling up Snowmelt. And this is one of your large ones. Yeah. And so now we see the drips. Talk about that. What's that? Yeah,
there's just a lot of layering, and I like to be expressive in how I apply paint, and that's part of the energy to it. In this case, speaking of energy, this was after a long stretch of COVID, and I could finally kind of get up into the mountains because the snow had melted, and the energy of the water coming down. You've got, all those negative ions and the rushing and the sound of the roaring water. And I really wanted to capture that. And also the contrast between both the elements, the hard rock and the soft water, and just between sunlight and shade. It can be extreme variation in higher altitudes. And, there's something symbolic too about just the water. I practice Tai Chi, and this is sort of the path of least resistance, that a creek will come down. I grew up in Michigan painting creeks, but nothing like this in the Southwest in the mountains. you just really have this sort of powerful coming down. It's just fresh from the snow.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was very life-giving coming off of, we're talking about our COVID experiences. This sort of led to a series of working on, particularly this creek, but a number of creeks around this area. But the blue here represents more just pure atmosphere. How things, as they recede in the distance, get more and more blue. I really exaggerated that. And again, the backlit situation, which I'm kind of so enamored with. And I like how things just dissolve into the background or the atmospheric, the ground of the painting.
Oh, wow. This is where it's abstract, but it also, to me, always feels like poetry with your work, because it's just, you're leaving in just the essential emotion words in a way,
Yeah, I try to do that. I'm definitely, like Andrew says, I'm not into just documenting something. I really want to find the poetry. So a lot of my poetry comes from listening to music more than actual poetry. And also, I'm very attracted to so much that's coming out in science and quantum physics and biology and things. And I find that to be poetry, and it really inspires my work.
Well, yeah. I mean, especially if you're working with atmosphere, and that's definitely, science when you come down to it. Like, why is it acting that way? And then you bring it back into the studio and create these wonderful, look at that jump of blue. That's so vibrant in this morning mist in the arroyo. Wow.
Well, that was very heightened. I mean, it's there, but I think emotionally I wanted it to be more of a shock than documenting the actual, value and color that I saw there. And I added that mist for atmosphere also. I like a little, mystery atmosphere. And,
That, it's interesting. That's always the fabulous thing that painters get to do. You can just add that mist, and Andrew and Barbra have to go out at the exact right time and head up the mountainside, knowing where the moon is going to be before midnight to get that effect that they want. But then also there's that thing when you're painting, especially more abstractly, the canvas is kind of a frightening thing because it's not, you have to go really with this gut and with all these tools and this knowledge you have to develop these paintings that are more about a thought or an emotion, right?
Yes, but I do whatever I can to take the pressure off. So I've developed a method that I can never overwork it. I can scrape it off. I can keep going. In fact, this one, okay.
Yeah.
I altered this painting quite a bit. It was reworked from a finished state at one point. And the tree on the left, the tree trunk on the left, came all the way out to the end of the next tree. And I've done that in the past where a tree trunk might take half of the composition. It's hard to pull off. I think I've done it more successfully in the past, but in this case, to rework it, I've actually cut that trunk down in size. So it's now more like a quarter or less of the composition instead of full third or more. Yeah, that's just another study up in the mountains that I gather information quickly, and I'm always just looking for problems that kind of continue from previous times. That I find something that there's no end to, I say problems, but just challenges that you're trying to do. And this, it's a study, and I really have no idea where it's going. But it's always they build on each other over the years.
Do you take these and create larger paintings with them?
I have in the past, but I've done a number of different ways, and part of it's been influenced by technology, of gathering images and also sketchbooking and developing compositions and ideas. And, you know, it used to be, I took a lot of slides and I'd sometimes fabricate compositions that way, or just constant filling up sketchbooks. And my my last sketchbook for the last almost 2 years has been an iPad.
Oh.
And I still use photographs that I take, and I run them through filters in Photoshop and on the iPhone, and I just try different things. And then I put it in a program that you can digitally paint into called Procreate on the iPad. So you're using a stylus, and it's like painting, really. It's amazing where the technology has come to.
Wow. God, you know, I'm trying to think of who did this. David Hockney did the cover of this week's New Yorker, and he did it on an iPad. You know, he's doing this whole series of just art on an iPad.
Yeah. No, he's really made the idea of painting on an iPad more popular than a number. I mean, he's been doing it a while, and those are finished pieces. I'm mostly using them as studies for paintings, which is a little.
So can we take a look at these paintings a little bit? I mean, some of these large ones are really nice and big and just so gorgeous.
I could try and take the camera up to them if that.
Yeah, let's. I mean, just to get an idea of the size. And as always, an hour has just flown by ridiculously fast. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that. Wow.
I'm going to try to pan a little bit. I'm a raw beginner at this.
Okay.
Stabilizer, so, but I don't know how well the texture and color is coming through.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. Oh, and look at that.
Yeah, you mentioned the drippiness. There's areas
Oh, yeah.
are very fluid, liquid, and other areas that are textural, especially in this one. That's, what's that called? Snow melt. So,
Wow.
I don't know how well that comes through, but
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And Sherry Salmon has just wrote gorgeous texture. So yeah, it's definitely coming through.
okay, thank you. Oops, oopsie.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Okay.
Oh, beautiful. Wow. Well, amazingly, it is 6:56 here in Colorado. How did that happen? We've just started, I feel like. I want to thank you all very much, Andrew, Barbara, and Rick. And I love to end with a question. Well, and first of all, if you have questions or comments for each other, now would be a great time. Just unmute and ask away. And I love to end with this question. How did you get here today? And not so much I went to school here, there, or like, what was the thing that brought you here with this work and where you are? And so if you have questions for each other, or if you have thoughts on that, I mean, please jump in. Andrew? Yeah,
I mean, what brought me here is just the continuum of a creative practice that's been just a central part of my life for decades. And so it's having a serious creative practice, a studio practice, a field practice. I can't imagine not doing this. It really is central to not only to who I am as an artist and as a human, but I mean, frankly, it's what keeps me kind of sane and grounded. So it's inherent to who I am. Yeah.
Wow. Barbara?
Oh, it's the great love of my life, photography and ranching. And I must say that I hope I'll fall off my perch with a camera in my hand when that day comes. It's just so important to me. It's very hard to put it into words for me. It's something I absolutely have to do. And I'm trying to see it in all of the possible different ways that it exists, so that I am perhaps pulling a bit of a curtain and letting other people see.
Oh, Barbra, I just love that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and that's really a blessing, that you as an artist and I really think our artists in the Coors show give to us, is that showing us your way of life. It's so authentic and it's just so wonderful. And it does really create a longing. It does for me. Rick, you're up next. And I just want to read a couple comments. Daniel Pyburn, am I saying that right? What?
Yeah.
Says, what a genius trio. I agree. And interviewer, thank you, Daniel. Rick is a legend here in Santa Fe.
Oh,
Wow.
sweet. Thank you, Dad.
And then I want
I wanted to,
Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with Andrew that this is making art as a practice, and I do it for myself and my own growth, but we're not an island. It's a communicative thing. And
Yeah.
it really means a lot when people respond to it and feel that sort of, I think the more, ironically, the more you go into your own individual psyche, the more universal it is as well. And it's the deeper you go into any one thing, the more it really is kind of a universal expression of everything.
You know, that is so fascinating. That is exactly the same in literature. The more specific you are, the more universal. It's a crazy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Linda Mcintyre writes, as a painter in Vermont at -8 degrees, so quit complaining, Colorado, Montana, New Mexico, I am moved to joy by this work. I was to be working in the high mountains of New Mexico, feeling the spaciousness, looking at your works, Rick. I was to visit you this summer, but I plan to contact each of you in the future. Here's to the power of the universe, stars, and Mother Nature. Thank you all. That's Linda Mcintyre. Michael Smith writes, I just want to hug Barbra. Michael, it's worth it. It's definitely worth it. I always hug Barbra whenever I see her too, and I'm going to miss that this January for sure. Cheryl Shaw, this series is an absolute treasure. Thank you, Cheryl. Linda Wright, wonderful to see you and your art, Rick. Words of wisdom for sure. Your colors are breathtaking. I agree. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. We're 1 minute after 7, but I'd love to, if you have any questions or comments for each other, I'm just going to zip it and let you have at it for the last little bit here while people are still hanging around.
Well, I just think it was a real pleasure to get to hear from Barbra and get to hear from Rick. And, you know, I've not met either of you all in person, but certainly it's always, there's always a level of serendipity, right, to getting artists in a room and hearing them talk about their work, because you realize while sort of formal concerns and approaches can be really different, how some of those core concerns really are universal. And there's a kind of solidarity with that. So I just say thank you all for the opportunity to get to hear you talk about your work.
And I think that it's art, no matter what our medium is. And that's one of the joys of being there at the Coors show, at least for me up here in the wilds of Montana in the backcountry. I just love coming to the Coors show and having an opportunity to visit and to talk art with other wonderful artists. I'm going to miss it this year, but this has been a little treasure.
You know what, it really has been. And I'm kind of choking up. I'm like, it's just as we get closer to what would have been our opening, it's like, I'm not going to get to see you all. And just handling the artwork is really, I always say it's my Christmas. Uncrating is my Christmas. I just love it every year. And I'm so sorry to miss all of this. And Linda writes, such a thrill to see your photography, Barbra, and to hear you talk about your experience. Very inspirational. You are a treasure. You are, from Linda Mcintyre. Rick, any final words you'd like to?
Yeah, I agree with Barb about just how whatever medium, art is art. And I got to meet Barbra last time, and she is the personification of this, what the Coors show was about, I think. And I'm so pleased to be part of it. And I appreciate how you have brought in such a diversity of artists and at such a high level.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for saying that, Rick. And thank you, Andrew, for being here, Barbra, Rick. It's just, what a joy. And there is a serendipity. Every single one of these talks has just been this lovely combination of people doing very different things, but there's so much we have in common, exactly as you said, Andrew. So in closing, I just want to say all the art is on our site, CoorsWesternArt.com. It is going to be sold through hand bid. When you go to our site, we'll direct you there if you want to place a bid on anything. It's kind of like working with eBay in that you can like things and then you'll get pinged if there's any action on it, stuff like that. The sale is basically one giant silent auction this year. It was the fairest way we could figure out how to do it. So just hop on and register and take a look around, and everything, that part of the sale culminates on January 5th. We're going to have a little video presentation, and we're going to have some awards. We're going to give out the awards then and just let everybody know. Best of Show and Western Art and Architecture is giving out an award that's new this year, Southwest Art Award, and some things like that. So that'll be on January 5th, and I hope you can join us. And the show will continue on through what would have been Stock Show through January 24th. So 2022. We're going to be back in the saddle, right? But for now, we're virtual. Again, thank you all. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I really appreciate it. And thank you for your comments. And please share with other people and let them know. And this recording will be up in the next couple days. So if you want to go back or let people know, it'll be there on our website. So anyway, thank you all. Thank you. I appreciate
you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Rose.
Thanks, Rose.
Have a good night, everybody. Take care. Stay warm, Vermont. We're going to stop complaining here in the West. Good night.
A good night.